obviously Transnistria is bordering Ukraine, and it has close relations to Russia as well.
What you never hear in the media, because it doesn't fit the narrative, is that
Transnistria is one of the world's most unusual places, breakaway territory caught between its Soviet past and its uncertain future. During my visit, I met with Tim from Tiraspol, and at the end of my 2-day tour, we sat down for a conversation about his life, his experiences, and what it's really like living there. We also spoke about Transnistria's identity, tourism, and the war in neighbouring Ukraine. So, this is Tim's story. I don't think I've properly introduced this gentleman yet. His name is Tim, and he runs a tour company here in Transnistria. And can you tell me a bit about your company?
Well, it's much more than a tour company. We started out 16 years ago, and we do global mass media, location producer work for the global media all over the Eastern Europe, Transnistria, Pridnestrovie, Moldova, Gagauzia, Ukraine, and we love it. I wouldn't be doing it anymore. I can stop if I want to, but I don't. So, and we have the most impressive collection of weapons anywhere in East Europe, and it's not like a traditional museum where it's all locked up under heavy security behind glass. No, our weapons are on display. You can pick them up and play with them and video yourself with them, so it's no problem whatsoever.
Very hands-on.
And I'm going to welcome you to the Guns Garage with Simogonka, homemade vodka.
Oh, is local?
Made in our founder's village, Alexander the Great, who was a veteran of the Soviet Army, and he collected all these weapons. That's why he's a highly decorated veteran. That's why he could have all these weapons. And they're all safe. Don't worry about it. The pins have been taken out so they can't fire. And you can play with them, take photos with them, video. And here's some homemade vodka.
Thank you. This is a very big shot glass, by the way. Normally
you don't have to take the whole thing. Here, all the local guys would take the whole shot, 100 grams, not 50 grams like in the West. They would take a 100-gram shot of this stuff. But I understand. You can sip on it. It's okay.
Well, I never said that I was a lightweight. Just,
Well, in that case, Davai. Davai, Druzha. Хорошо работал. Good job. Good job.
Спасибо. That was actually very smooth.
Yeah.
Very smooth. So easily drinkable.
Actually, it has less toxins in it than most factory-made vodka.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's more pure. And for example, grandmothers will take it as medicine. What they do is they take it homemade in the basement and they put lots of herbs in it. And they'll use it like cough medicine.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, I could see it's quite effective.
Or you could put it in your car and run it. No problem. Probably cheaper than gas, that's for sure. These days. It's cheaper than gas these days.
Yeah.
So you got a question for me?
Yeah. So how long did you say you've been living in Transnistria then? I know you've had the tour, the company for 16 years.
16 years. It's a long story. My grandmother was from Moldova, but I was born in Nebraska. And, it's kind of typical Midwest Americana, corn, cowboys, cows, American football, pizza, beer. But, I was an intellectual. I wanted to be a writer. I was kind of isolated and introverted, especially. I didn't have many people like me in the area, so I started writing, and I wrote 2 movie scripts. At only 18 years old, I took them to Hollywood and did everything right. I joined the Writers Guild and lived in a little apartment with 5 other guys who were all dreamers, wanting to be actors and everything. Typical Hollywood thing. And it's always a disaster. They end up working at McDonald's and sweeping floors and
it's a stereotypical story.
Yeah, but it's hard to break into the 1%ers of the world.
I can imagine.
They defend their territory very well, and they want the other 99% to just be the slaves of the world. So
isn't that the way of it always? Yeah.
I shopped it around, and one of my friends introduced me to a writer for Warner Brothers, and I met with him several times. Went to his house, gave him a script I'd written called Whitewater. It was about a tsunami that hit Los Angeles. All the city of Los Angeles was flooded. All the buildings were flooded and filled with great white sharks and other kinds of sharks, and going up the elevator shafts and through the hallways. And our heroes, which I wrote two black lead characters, because this was 90s, and I'm old, so this was 90s, and the Hollywood was really pushing to establish black lead actors. So I went with that. I had a business mind back then, so I purposely wrote two black leads, and I met with him several times, and at one point he stopped replying to me, and I thought, well, that's it. And I worked on like 5 Western movies with a director named Joseph Sargent, who was he won some Emmys and things like this, and Directors Guild Awards. Famous in Hollywood, and but he was old when I met him. He liked me because I was straight, like I am now. Straight talking, and no political correctness, no BS. I just said exactly what I think, and also I could ride a horse, and he really took a liking to me, and he used me on all his movies at that time. But he was old, and he passed away, and I didn't have a job anymore. That looked like my scripts weren't selling, so I went home, and after about a year and a half went by. I'll try and summarize this because so much happened in all this time.
That's understandable, yeah.
But me and my father were watching television, and a trailer came on for a movie called Deep Blue Sea with Samuel L. Jackson.
I remember that
Made by guess who? Warner Brothers. And me and my dad both said, that's your movie. They had just edited it, changed it a little bit, and I contacted the Writers Guild. I went to a copyright attorney. I went to the movie. I ordered a script from online of the finished script from Deep Blue Sea. I compared them. I found action scenes that were the same, 16 pages of dialogue that were the same or similar. And I got affidavits from my friends that I met with these guys. And I went to a copyright attorney in Nebraska, and he said, you have a great case. But he was a little firm, one guy. You have a great case. I'm going to do some preliminary investigation and contacts, and I'll get back to you. He called me into his office a month later, and he said, basically, do you have any money? I said, no, I'm from a poor farm family. I personally have $5,000. He said, I have to drop the case because they have the biggest law firm in Los Angeles. They have billions of dollars, and they will bury us over 6-7 years of legal maneuvers, and it'll cost me $1 million to pursue the case, and it's 50-50 if I win. So I can't do it pro bono. I can't take the risk, even though you have a good case. And I said, will anybody else do it? He said, you can try. I went to a couple other attorneys. They told me the exact same thing. You have a good case, but they have the biggest law firm in Los Angeles. And this was a wake-up moment for me when I realized justice is for the rich. It's not for average people. And they make their own laws. I woke up. I just basically told the universe, okay, I can't even keep my own scripts. Seems like the elite can do whatever they want. I'm out of here. I'm going to go blow with the wind. Whatever happens, happens. You decide. And I ended up being an English teacher in Japan, then being an English teacher in Seoul, Korea, and saved a lot of money because you get a free apartment and a good salary. They work your ass off, though, no doubt about it.
Right.
You're not getting home till 11 or midnight, and then you still have some work to do at home.
Oh, wow. That's a lot of commitment required from you there.
Yeah. But you do get a few free days off, and I had a lot of fun, especially in Seoul. Japan's highly advanced society, so is Korea, and I had a lot of fun and a lot of interesting times. But I didn't want to stay there, so I took the money I saved and I came to Europe. I'm really summarizing everything quickly. I took the money and I saved and came to Europe and did the bouncing around hostels all over Europe, saw all of Europe, but I fell in love with Eastern Europe because it's the right mix of East and West, and it was much cheaper, much more laid back, much easier to deal with the people.
All of which are big appeals for most people, I would say.
Yeah. So I ended up living in a city in Poland that most people probably haven't heard of, Katowice. It's only an hour away from Krakow.
I've been there before.
Yeah, now it's the hub of Wizz Air, so a lot of people know about it, and it's been renovated now, and it has the big spaceship, which is one of the biggest concert venues in Europe, and they also have Silesia Mall, which is huge. And I lived there and had a great time. It was cheap. There was 2 zloty beers in the pubs back then, which is basically free. Now it's like a 20 zloty beer in the pubs. And I loved it there. And I stayed there for a while, developed a lot of friends, had good times. But at some point, I was just spending money and having fun and partying and spending all my money. And I saw online that Moldova had dropped their old Soviet visa standard, and you could go to Moldova visa-free. So I went and took an old Soviet train that doesn't exist anymore from Warsaw to Chisinau, 36-hour train.
Wow.
Got here alone. I was used to traveling alone, didn't bother me, and stayed in. At that time was the only hostel in Chisinau. It was all filled with retired Italian guys because there was no tourist here at all. I was one of the few foreigners, and the hostel was filled with the retired Italian guys because they came here because they could understand some Romanian. They're on pension, and it was cheap here, and they just came here and had fun, drank beer, and chased girls.
That explains the reasoning, because to me that just sounds a little bit random. That it would be that'd be the main demographic.
It was
that you'd
easy for
find.
them because they could understand some Romanian, and lots of pretty girls here, and it was cheap for them to go out to pubs and dinner and whatever they wanted. It was really cheap for them. And it's much more expensive in Chisinau now. It's being Europeanized with all the NGOs and everything.
Yeah, I didn't find it too cheap myself. when I
No,
went there.
it's not like the old days. So when you got like 100 foreign NGOs, they kind of start to drive up the prices, and a lot of changes start taking place.
It's almost expected.
Yeah. And then the monopolies, the European Union monopolies move in and kind of take over, and then the prices really raise. And but besides that, it's but like a city-state, and then the rest of Moldova is the same, you know. But anyway, so I stayed there, and I went to a rock pub because I used to be a lead singer in a rock band, and I can play drums okay, and I like rock music, and I was tired of Euro techno. Oh my God, I got so sick of that. So I went to an underground rock pub. It was the only one in Chisinau, and back in those days, they had bands like Alive and Infected Rain, which are huge now. They're in like the dark gothic metal scene, and people in that scene will recognize them because they tour the world now, and they're huge.
Right.
And so I was hanging out with those guys, and but I became best friends with Alive. And they were popular in Moldova. You can see their music videos. You can see Infected Rain all over YouTube. They're huge now, and Alive still has their music videos on, but they're defunct now. But I made best friends with those guys and ended up living in their band house with them, and that was just right back to square one, a giant party. And, you know, it was a rock band in Moldova where all the alcohol is as cheap as water, so you can imagine it was chaos. And then they would have these concerts in old abandoned Soviet factories outside of Chisinau, and with generators, and they were legal, of course, but they would put it out on social media, and all the people would come, the equivalent of like €2 to get in, bring your own alcohol and food, no police, nobody knew about it, and they could play all night. And we'd have several bands.
Those must have been some great parties.
They were great parties, and I became famous in those. I became famous in those circles because I was the only foreigner ever there, all the time. So I started to become famous. Everybody started to know me, and became very interesting. But you know, your health, it's a lot of fun, but your health starts to go downhill, and all you're doing is spending money and partying.
Which is what you're trying to get away from.
Yeah. So, but I met a girl who was at Ulam University, which is the linguistics university. She spoke 4 languages, and she kind of drugged me out of there, and we got serious very fast, like in 2 weeks, and we were living together. And she's a Russian Moldovan girl from Pridnestrovie, Transnistria here, and she brought me here to meet her family 16 years ago. I've been here ever since. I told everybody we needed to make money, so I want to try and bring tourists here. And they said, no way, no tourist will ever want to come here. I said, Yes, they will. They said, why? It's just an old Soviet hole. And I said, that's why they want to come here. They want to see old Soviet life. They want to see old Soviet monuments. And they want to see this old way of life, and it exists here. They didn't believe me, but they believe me now. And then I ended up getting arrested by the KGB, spent a week in a KGB prison. That's because 5 guys from Liverpool came here because I was smuggling people across the border. Because in those days you could only get 12 hours at the border, and that wasn't going to work for this business. So I started smuggling people back and forth, which sounds very James Bond, but what I did was I knew cognac and cigarette smugglers who went daily, across the border. So I just put my tourist in with them. It wasn't a lot of tourists, a few, but I got away with that for over a year. And then these guys from Liverpool came. They were drinking, we have cheap vodka, like 50 euro cents a bottle. And they were having a vodka for breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day. Ooh. They turned into zombies. I told them to stay home because they were zombified after the 4th day. They promised they would, but they didn't. I left, and they went out, and they started punching out windows down Main Street for some reason, like 10 windows. Of course, they got arrested. They deserved arrested. They deserved to be in jail.
If you're doing that, yeah.
I got a call from the chief of police in the center. He said, these guys with you? I said, oh my God, yeah. And I went down there. Had to stay the night on a wooden bench. They were nuts, punching walls that were concrete, which don't give way. And they said, I paid a fine, bribe. And
Same.
Yeah. And they said, we're still not going to let them out because you can see they're nuts. I go, I see. So I waited till the morning, and they passed out, got very hungover. I took them back to my house, made them soup, taped up their bloody hands, cleaned them up, put them in bed, did the best I could. Told them, I'm staying at the house. You're never going out again. This is over. And I stayed there and watched them sleep and took care of everything, watched over them. And then at 3 in the afternoon, KGB raided the house because police had contacted them and said, all these people are way overstayed their registration. And so, I slept on a wooden cot in a KGB prison for 4 nights. But the interesting thing was, they respected me because when they asked me, do you want us to contact your embassy? I said, nah, just a bunch of bureaucracy, never mind. I got family here, I'm not leaving, so no problem. And they were kind of surprised by that, and I stayed. And they started coming into my cell in the evenings and bringing vodka and snacks and hanging out and drinking and talking with me, and it was nothing unusual. They were joking and
KGB officers.
And talking, yeah.
That's better hospitality than many hotels around.
Yeah, they were talking about their families, wanted to learn English. There wasn't any underhanded questioning because I was watching for it. Nothing, just totally normal. And I'm still friends with some of those guys to this day.
And were they just people doing their job?
Yeah, just people doing their job. And I haven't really had any problems since then, and this has been going forever. And then one day, a producer of CBS News, New York City, for CBS News contacted me and said, we really need help in Pridnestrovie, Transnistria, and can you be our location producer? They asked a bunch of questions. I said yes to everything. I didn't know how I was going to do it. And I accomplished everything. They came here with 8 SUVs filled with millions of dollars of video equipment. They weren't supposed to enter because journalists weren't allowed. So what I did is I went to the head priest of a church that I had been bringing tourists to and donating to and giving food to their orphans, and they loved me. They still love me to this day. And I got letterhead from the head priest saying they're with the church, and I promised I was bringing them to the church, and I did, to do some video about how good the church is and how good the church is, how well they live, how they're have everything just like anybody in the West does. And when we got to the border, I showed the letterhead. All the people in the crew had the letterhead, and we went across.
That's awesome.
And we videoed for a week all over Transnistria with this huge crew, and that was my get out of jail card. With police pulled over all these brand new Western SUVs for bribes, I just said, you don't want to mess with the priest, do you? And they, bye, see you later. They don't want to tell mom I took bribes from people with the church, right?
It's literally a get out of jail free
Was
card.
it? Yeah, it literally was. And the producers were so impressed that when they got home to New York, they literally sent my information to every major producer on planet Earth and said, Tim is your guy. This guy pulls off miracles. We couldn't believe it. And I've been getting business with the global media ever since then.
What
That's
an
a quick
amazing
summary.
story.
I got 10,000 unbelievable stories you wouldn't even believe. I met Vladimir Putin once, but that's for another day, I think.
Wow.
It's a long time ago in Pskov, Russia. He gave a speech at the Airborne Forces headquarters there in the stadium. And when I say met him, I didn't have a meeting with him. He was my godfather was an airborne officer, and he came down the line shaking hands, and I was with my godfather, and I was just there for a few weeks in the summer, and he invited me to go see the speech, and he came down the line, and I was in the second row, and when he came by, I shook his hand. He went on down the line. That was my meeting.
Wow.
But yeah. So,
Well, that's closer than most people are able to get to him.
I was again the only
nowadays.
foreigner there, and it was just because I was with an officer of the airborne, so security let me right through. And I can send you pictures from that event. They were taken on 35 millimeter.
Oh, okay.
But I took a picture of a picture, and I can send
Right.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
So
Wow.
I have proof.
I believe you.
Yeah.
Well, on that note, I was just wondering because obviously Transnistria is bordering Ukraine, and it has close relations to Russia as well. At least in the West, most people have a very strong opinion about the Ukraine-Russia war, and most people side with Ukraine on that. And most people sort of have this. A lot of people have this negative sentiment against Russia, or at least the government. Let's just say. And I was just wondering, what's the general consensus or opinion of the public here in this
Well,
area
it's
about the conflict?
easy for people on the other side of the world to be war cheerleaders because they're sitting there with a cappuccino and they believe all the propaganda that's on television. When you're near a conflict zone or a war zone, you can't find war cheerleaders. Amazingly enough, there aren't any war cheerleaders because they're directly affected. So we've had zero benefit from the war, and people here are neutral. We have Russian culture, but that doesn't mean anyone wants a war. So a lot of people here love Russia, and they love Russian culture, but they do not love war. You will not find anyone who supports the war here. That doesn't mean that they don't support Russia. They do support Russian culture and life and way of life in general.
I feel
completely.
that's quite a separate thing.
Yeah, but a lot of people can't separate it. So, and we're multicultural. We are, how could we not be? We have Moldova on one side and the Odessa, biggest port in the Black Sea on the other. All of our goods and services came from the port of Odessa, and having that decline really affected us here. Everything here came from the port of Odessa, and everybody went to school there and had boyfriends and girlfriends there and family there. Our founder of this garage, his family is from Odessa.
Oh, okay.
He, even though he was in the Soviet army and he was in the army here in Transnistria, he and his family have Ukrainian passports. 30% of the population here in Transnistria have Ukrainian passports.
That's huge.
Have a huge Bulgarian community. They have Bulgarian passports. They're members of the EU. They go work in the EU and bring that money back here. We have, everyone here has a Moldova passport. And everyone here is eligible for a Russian passport and a Romanian passport. And I know people, that's 5 passports. I know people that have all 5 passports. Very multicultural, and nobody has a problem because you know why? Everybody lives in their true sphere of influence. Nobody's trying to live outside of their sphere of influence on the internet, arguing with strangers, and the only thing you get out of it is high blood pressure. That's all you'll ever get out of it. They concentrate on their real, actual reality.
Take note of that.
And they're
warriors.
happier that way. They're much happier and effective in life that way. And I think the whole world should learn from that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's very interesting. Also, another interesting thing, when we were about to cross the border into Transnistria, you were telling me about how a lot of the foreign media, they sort of give this false impression that it's completely controlled by Russian soldiers, everything. But then when we were actually crossing the Moldovan checkpoint, you had pointed out a soldier which had a Moldovan flag
That's because he
their
is
shoulder.
a Moldovan soldier. What you never hear in the media, because it doesn't fit the narrative, is that unit was organized to be a peacekeeping force. And when it was incorporated in 1992 to keep peace between Transnistria and Moldova, it incorporated Russian soldiers, Ukrainian soldiers, and Moldova soldiers. So when I first came here, I would see Ukrainian soldiers walking around on the street. It was normal to see Ukrainian soldiers with Ukrainian
Okay,
flag,
right.
especially in Bender, which is the second largest
Right,
city.
we visited there yesterday.
Yeah, I used to see Ukrainian soldiers there all the time.
I didn't realize that. Okay.
But of course, when Crimea happened, they left the force and went home.
Understandably.
And but the Moldovan soldiers are still, and you saw it with your own eyes.
Yes.
They're incorporated into that force. They wear the same insignia as the Russian soldiers, except on their shoulder they have a Moldova flag.
I see.
It is not reported. They want to throw out this thing that somehow it's a new Russian airborne force that just dropped from space, because we have no connection to Russia at all anymore. So I guess they dropped from space. But all the Russian soldiers that are in the unit are born here in Transnistria and Pridnestrovie, and they just happen to have as a Russian passport. As I told you, we can get 5 passports. So they also have a Russian passport. So they're incorporated into the force. And when you cross that border, just look on your right. That is a Moldova soldier. Any of you can see it for yourself. He is wearing a Moldova flag. And on the left, Russian soldiers. And they intermix. They're in the same unit. So
Yeah, I saw it myself as well.
he saw it.
Yeah.
He can show it to you. And yeah, it's just never reported. I hope you do. I know your reach is small, but let's build it by telling the truth.
You heard him. You heard him.
Build it by telling the truth. We'll help you. We'll help you.
Sounds like a great idea.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, is there anything else you can think of to say? It's had an
No,
awesome
I
time.
think my tongue's gonna fall out. You know, I don't know how many interviews I've given. Probably thousands at this point. So
Probably. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah,
Thank you so much for that.
thank you so much, brother.
And
And
it's-
everybody's welcome here. MoldovaHostel.com. Check it out.
Absolutely. I highly recommend this guy if you're ever considering coming to Transnistria, because he's done an awesome job of giving me a great first impression. And not only first impression, but just a well-rounded impression of the area and what life is like, what it's really like. And it's just been fascinating for me. I have to say it's probably one of the most interesting places I've ever visited. And I've been to a few, so that means something. Oh,
Thank you.
thank you again, Tim.